Okay, hi everyone. Good evening. Welcome to another class. This is our fourth week, class 7, and I'm excited for us to, as always, learn more stuff today. And it's good to see everyone. So just to go over some of the things that we'll be covering today. In today's class, we'll review our intro to JavaScript. We will also review data types. We'll review conditionals. We'll learn about functions. We'll learn about loops, and then we'll write some code. So, we have some good stuff today. Excited to get into that. As always, before we begin, if you have any questions from last class, or if you have any questions from what we've been doing so far, please feel free to ask. We'll give it a few minutes if you have any questions. You can either type in chat or come off mute. Okay. I don't know when people don't have questions. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. The good thing might be that everybody understands what we've been talking about so far. And the bad thing can be like people probably have questions, but then they're afraid to ask or yeah, but I hope it's the former where people understand what we've been talking about. So yes, a few more minutes. If you don't have any questions, we'll just move on. Okay, cool. So just to recap some of the things we spoke about last week, we spoke about what a program is. We said that a program is a set of instructions that tells a computer what to do. We spoke about the fact that a computer can only do the things that we tell it to do. So by programming, we are essentially writing a set of instructions for our computer to know what to do. So programming is the task of writing those instructions in the language that the computer can understand. We spoke about how there are several languages. Some being low-level languages. And we spoke about JavaScript in particular being a higher level language. We said at the end of the day, computers don't speak English. They speak binary, which are zeros and ones. But then for us to be able to give those instructions, because we don't necessarily know binary, we usually write it in a programming language. Then the programming language transpiles and compiles it down into a language that the computer can understand and in turn executes. Kobna said he can't hear me. Can the rest of you hear me? Please give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Yeah, okay, Kobna. So you might have to check your audio. Okay. So we spoke about JavaScript. We said JavaScript is a cross-platform object-oriented scripting language. All it means is that with JavaScript, we can build applications across different devices. So we spoke about how we could use JavaScript to build web applications. We can use JavaScript to build cloud applications. We can also use it to build mobile applications. But if you're still having issues hearing me, you can put it in chat, but maybe you can leave and reconnect, or maybe disconnect your audio and reconnect. And let me know if you can hear me fine. So we spoke about how to connect our HTML to our JavaScript. Okay, I think you can hear me now. We spoke about how to connect our HTML, our code, our JavaScript to our code. We spoke about how we can add it to a script tag just above our closing body tag, and we can link our JavaScript to it. I guess no one has any questions in regards to this. So we spoke about how we can test out our JavaScript, or we can write JavaScript code directly in our browser. We said when we go into our browser, we have what we call the developer tools. And in the developer tool, we have a console. And in the console, we can write and execute JavaScript code directly in the browser, which is one of the perks of writing JavaScript. You can test out your code directly in the browser. We also spoke about how we can use console.log to quickly print out things and see the results without having to run the code or compile the code. So we can just use a console.log to log things onto our console. Now, into the main syntax of JavaScript, the first thing we spoke about was variables. And we said variables are essentially storehouses. They are like safes where we can store information inside. So variables are used to store value so that our computer can remember them. We tried a few examples where we did 1+1 and it was equal to 2. But then we knew that every time we wanted to do the same thing or anytime we needed the results to, we had to manually enter 1+1 again. So our way of doing it was maybe storing add two numbers in a variable so that we could store the results we get in that variable so that anytime we needed that, we don't need to always redo that calculation again. So variables allow us to store information so that we can remember, so that our computer can remember and always reuse them. And we said there are three ways that we can declare variables. If we want to first establish a variable, there are three ways we can do it. We can use either the var keyword, the const keyword, or the let keyword. We said that these days we don't really use var because the reason we don't use var is globally scoped. And what I mean by globally scoped is that, so if in one part of my application, or at the top of my application, I declared a variable which was called maybe var today, then somewhere in a function, I declare the same variable and I make it var today. Normally, variables are supposed to be block scoped. What that means is that I'm only supposed to access that variable where I declare it. But when I use var, I can access it everywhere in my code. So sometimes something that I wasn't hoping to access here, because I declared with var, it will still be accessed in that block of code. So then it can cause a lot of confusion. So now usually we use const and let when we are trying to declare a variable. And we said the way we decide whether we are going to use let or const to declare the variable is we use const if we are not going to reassign or we're not going to give that variable a new value. So I have an example here. Const my birthday. My birthday will never change. It will always be the same thing. So I can declare that variable using a const because I don't expect it to change. But we use let for variables where in the future we expect that the value will change. So that's how we decipher between whether to use let or const. And we said that most times we'll just use const because it's not, most times when you're programming, you don't really reassign your values. Most times the variables you declare will almost always have the same value as you go on. It's rare that you reassign them. So we use const just so that our code is more robust. So yeah, the other thing was that a variable name, we said a variable name can be anything. You can call your variable anything, but a good way to do it is to let your variable name have a clean and obvious meaning so that it describes the data you're storing in it. Because you don't want to give your variable a weird name and you come maybe a week later and you're like, hey, this variable, what is it supposed to do? So even though your variable, you can name it anything, it's a good convention to give it a meaningful name, a clean and obvious meaning so that at least for you the programmer, you can always at least remember what this variable is doing. Okay. Now then, so then the next thing we spoke about some ways we can name our variable, and we said that most times we just use camel casing. So camel casing is when the first word is all small caps, but everyone that comes after it, the first letter is capitalized. So in this example, you have name of person. So name is the first word is all small caps, but then every word that comes after it, the first letter is capital. So name of person. That's the general way we usually name our variables. I mean, you could also do underscore. So name underscore of underscore person. I mean, it's usually preference, but this is what we mostly use because then it's cleaner. And the other thing we spoke about was that the name must only contain letters, digits, and symbols. And then you cannot begin your variable names with a digit. So your variable name cannot start with a number. It always has to start with either a letter, it has to start with a letter or a symbol. You can't begin your variable names with a number. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that variable names are case sensitive. So in JavaScript, case sensitivity is a thing in the sense that this apple and this apple are not the same. In my computer memory, when I declare a variable and I name it an apple with a capital A, and I try to access it with an apple with a small p, it will be like undefined because these two are not the same. So that's just one of the things I wanted to mention, that variable names are case sensitive, where this and this are not the same, because then this has a capital, this has a small letter. So that's something to keep in mind. Any questions so far? Okay, so just to quickly go over, we said this is how you declare a variable. You have the let or the const keyword, then the name of the variable. Then when you're assigning the value, you use an equal to sign and whichever value you want to assign to it. So this is how you declare a variable, either const or let, the name of your variable. And if you're trying to assign a value to it, you can do, you can do all at the same time. You don't always have to declare it and come and assign a value. So you can do it all in one line, where you can do it all in one line, where you declare the variable and you assign it a value. So this is me declaring the variable, and this is me assigning it a value of Cornelius. So let's name it called Cornelius. Yeah. I mean, in this thing, the best thing would have been to use const, because my name will never change. And we said we use const for data, which will most likely not change. My name will never change. So I could use a const here instead of let. Yeah. Okay, any questions so far before we review data types? Okay. Eh, And by the way, Kobna, I hope you can hear us now. Yeah. Okay, so we spoke about data types. So we said a value in JavaScript is always of a certain type. So every value that we have is of a particular data type. So then we learned of the various data types available in JavaScript. Now, the first one we learned was a string. We said a string is textual data, so a sequence of characters. And then they are always marked by a closing quotation mark and an opening quotation mark and a closing quotation mark. So that is a string. So that is one of the data types in JavaScript, string, which is usually a sequence of characters. You mark it with an opening quotation mark and a closing quotation mark. Now the next thing was numbers, and we said numbers are integers or floats. So floats are floating point numbers like 1.2, 2.3, what you usually call a decimal number. And numbers are just regular integers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we'll get to begin, so I'll talk about it. Then we have Boolean. Boolean are true or false. So they are is the data type we usually get when we are comparing things. So it's A bigger than B. Usually our code will return a Boolean, either a true or false. So that is another example of a data type that we have in JavaScript, a Boolean, which is a logical representation, true or false. And it always comes as a result of comparison. When we compare things, that's the response we usually get back. Now, we spoke about null, and we said null is a variable that has been explicitly set to have no value. So in turn, for example, when we had let's name and we hadn't given it any value, by default, the value is null. So if we had checked the type of this, it will be null, because then it doesn't have any value. So a null value is a value that references no value. It doesn't have any value. So in our computer memory, when we check, it doesn't point to anything, because usually when we declare a variable, it is saved in our computer memory, and the value we give to it is what that variable is pointing to. But then when we have a null value, it means even though we've saved that variable in our computer memory, it doesn't point to any value. So in our computer memory, the value is empty or is null. So a null variable is one that is said to have no value. Now we said that a value can be undefined. Another data type is undefined. So undefined is a variable that has been assigned no value. So if we declare a variable and we don't assign it any value. Now don't get null and undefined confused. Usually null is explicitly set. So when I do let Cornelius, I explicitly set the value to null. So in this example, let me open this up. So in this example, I could do const name is equal to no. So all I'm saying is that in my computer memory, let name point to nothing. So usually null is explicitly said. You have to actually instruct your computer that this is not pointing to anything. So in that memory, make it empty. Whereas an undefined value is where I have name and I don't give it any Okay, so you see that because I have used const, I can't give you anything. So let's just call this name two. So this will be undefined because I haven't given it any value. Here I'm setting it directly that let the value be nothing, let it point to nothing. But here I'm not stating it. So when I check the type of name two, it will be undefined because it doesn't have any value. Does that make sense? If you don't understand, you can ask a question. If you do, you can give me a thumbs up. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next thing we spoke about was symbols. So symbols are just unique values, and those ones they were just recently introduced in 2015. So you don't have to worry too much about that. But they are just unique and immutable values. Now, the other thing I wanted to add, I noticed that we didn't talk about it the last time, but it's called big ints. So big ints are not numbers. So what numbers usually represent is you have a range of which your computer memory can directly store it. So those ones are just classified as numbers. But there are times when those numbers are too big that your computer cannot directly store it. So those ones are referred to as big ints. Now, it's rare that you run into a big int situation, but a big int is usually usually numbers that are above like two exponents. I don't know how to do like exponents, but two exponent like 56 or which is a very large number. So you really have to run into it, or two exponents 56 minus one, which is very math, but it's usually very large numbers. So very large numbers, they are numbers of arbitrary length. So those ones, they are not usually considered as just regular numbers. They are considered as big ints. So yeah, rarely will you run into numbers this large, except you are doing like incredible, like you are doing like a big amount of analysis, or maybe you are calculating how to get to space or things like that. But yeah, so those are big ends. Now these ones are called, the reason they are called primitive data is usually they just contain one thing. So a string is just a string, a number is just a number, a boolean is just a boolean. It's not holding two things. So it's not holding like a string and a number at the same time. So they are called primitives because they hold a singular thing. Now there's one other data type in JavaScript which is called objects. Now what objects are is objects can hold all these things. So an object can hold a string, it can hold a number, it can hold a boolean. So it's not a primitive, but it's also an example of data types where it can hold all the various things. Okay, so these are the primitive data types. These are the ones you mostly encounter, at least most of them. I mean, string is the one you use the most. String is the one you would use the most. Numbers, you encounter numbers, especially when you're doing a lot of comparisons, you encounter booleans and things like that. Any questions? Uh, Okay, so we'll quickly move on. The next thing we spoke about was just basic operators. So we just spoke about how we can do basic operations or basic math in JavaScript. And these were the ones we spoke about. The only one most of us were probably not familiar with is modulus. We said modulus just returns the remainder. So the way division just returns, like if this can be divided by this, modulus returns the remainder. So if I divided 10 by 3, the remainder is 1 because then it will be left to 1. So modulus just returns the remainder. And this is how you can do exponent. So if you wanted to do 2 exponent 5, you will do 2 double asterisk and 5. So that's how we do exponents. These are the basic math operators that we have in JavaScript. We also spoke about how we can do equality. So we said equality is 3 equal signs. If we are trying to assign something, like the way we assign variables, we use 1 equal sign. If we are trying to check equality, if something is equal to something, we use 3 equal signs. Now, the reason we use 3 equal signs instead of 2 equal signs is usually when you use 2 equal signs, all it just returns is equality. So if I did, for example, if I did 2 equals 2 equals 2. By default, this is not the same because this is a string and this is a number. So if we were to run this, save. So let me just, let me console log this. If I console log this, we expect to see that it's false because then we said a number string is not equal to, a number 2 is not equal to a string 2. So if I just run this, I hope I'm in the right file. Node. Let me just go into CD class. So node main. Okay, so if we just run this, we see that it's false because then 2 is not equal to 2. So the reason we use 3 equal signs is that 3 equal signs is strict. So it checks for equality. First, it checks for equality and then it checks for the type. It checks if they're of the same data type. So usually you use 3 equal signs just so they are safe. Because if you use 2 equal signs, what it will just check for is equality. It won't check for the data type. So for example, if I did the same thing and I did console console.log, and I'm just running the code directly in my IDE so that it's quicker, not in the browser. If we did 2 equals 2, this will just check if they are the same thing, like it's 2 equals to 2. It will ignore the fact that one is a string and one is a number. So if I were to save this and if I were to run it again, let me comment this out so that it doesn't also show. So if we were to run this, we can see that it is given true. The reason it is given true is that whenever we use 2 equal signs, it just checks for equality. So it will just check, is this 2? Is this also 2? Then they are the same. But then when we use 3 equal signs, we are telling it to directly check for equality and type. So first, check if they are equal, but also check if you're of the same data type, which is usually what you want to do because then you wouldn't want your number 2 and your string 2. I mean, if you wanted a string 2, you actually write a string 2. So mostly when you do this is because you've made a mistake. So you want to like use triple equal signs so that it is like strictly checking so that you won't make those kinds of mistakes. So 3 equal signs will check, are they equal? Are they also of the same data type? But 2 equal signs will just check, are they equal? So it's a number 2. All I can see is 2. I don't care if one is a string and one is a number. So usually you just use 3 equal signs just so that you're safe. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, so these are the ways you can check for equality. We said these are the ways, sorry, you can compare stuff. So you use equal to sign, 3 equal to signs. If you use 1 equal to sign, you're assigning it. So you're saying that let this have this value. Okay. Okay, so we went over this. It's just the same things. Okay, now the other thing we didn't get to talk about was logical operators. So there are ways that you can check for multiple things. Now the very first one is not. So if you wanted to check, is 3 not equal to 4? What you do is you use the exclamation mark. So the exclamation mark is called the not operator. So it's usually ways that you can test out multiple conditions at once. So in our code, for example, if we wanted to check 3 is not equal to 4. Let me just, and as always, if you want to see it without running your code, you have to just console log it so that it logs it. So I'm just console logging it so that 3, okay, if 3 is not equal to 4. Okay, George dropped off. So let me just, 3 is not equal to 4. So if I do a not operator, what I'm saying is that check if this is not equal to something. So if you want to check for, if you want to make a comparison, something is not equal to something, you use the not operator, which is just an exclamation mark. So in the example I have here, so if I wanted to check, so if X, I've declared a variable, I've called it X, which is not a good thing. Usually give your variables good names so that you can remember. But in this simple example, I just gave you an X. So if I have X is equal to 5 and I wanted to check if X is greater than X is greater than 10. I mean, usually you could do is X greater than 10, but if you wanted to like reverse it, so I wanted to do something, if they were not equal, I would do the not operator. So if X is not greater than 5, log X is not greater than 10. Sorry, if X is not greater than 10, log X is not greater than. So by using this thing, I can do like the reverse logic. So is this not greater than that? So that's how you do the not operator. It's just usually a reverse logic. So if you wanted to reverse your logic, you use a not. I hope that makes sense. Now, the other thing,
Why,
please go.
why, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
so why, when you use the console log for that expression, like you're having that error message?
Oh, so I have an extension for like running things personally so that when I'm usually coding it's quicker. So usually before I run it, if there's an error, it just locks it. But normally it won't do that. But I have this extension. I have it so that usually I can see things before I run it. But if we do,
Okay.
so I need to type it out. So dot log. It should run okay. I hadn't completed it, that's why. Yeah, so it's just like the extension I have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
an extension I have that was making.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So
Thank
I mean, if I check 3 is not equal to 4, it should return true because except my math is wrong, 3 is actually not equal to 4. So let's run this and see. As always, if you make changes, don't forget to save. Uh, Okay, so yeah, it returns true because 3 is not equal to 4. So that's the way you can do like a reverse logic. So if something is not equal to anything, the main thing is the exclamation mark. Then you can add anything that you want to add. Okay, cool. Now the other thing is what we call the OR operator. So the OR operator is just two slashes. It's not yeah, slashes. So this two things. So if I wanted to check for usually use an or if you want to do something if one of the statements is true. So for example, if I had a statement where I'm like, give the children, as long as it's a boy or a girl, give them toffee. So by using or if one of them is true, so if I have two people and one of them happens to be a boy, then in turn my statement will be true. So then it will return true. So when you use the or operator, it just means that as long as one of them is true, run whatever we tell it to run. So you use or to, yeah, it returns true if either of the operands is true. So an example can be, let's say that, let's say that we want to go out, but they said you have to be 18. Let me just, we don't need this. So let me just, let's say that you wanted to go out and they said that one of you has to be 18. So I can say, if Kofi is 18 or or and by the way, it'll give an error because of course we haven't declared what Kofi is, so our computer doesn't know what Kofi is, but this is just like a quick example. So if Kofi is equal to 18 or Ama is equal to 18, let them console.log you can go out. So by default, let's maybe give this Kofi is let's Kofi, and maybe I should use const so that we get used to using const. Let me type on my other keyboard. Let's start to type on my computer keyboard. Let Kofi equals 18 and const armor equals 15 by default. Because, and again, you can tell me that you can see what I was saying, that JavaScript is case sensitive. So you can see my error lens is saying I cannot find name Kofi because I made one capital and I made this. So by default, they refer to two different things. So my computer can't tell which one. So always remember that things are case sensitive. So if I were to console log this, else, okay, let me just give it an else console log. So if any of them wasn't over 18, we'll console or log stay at home or things like that. And so let me just put this above just so it makes sense. So if we run this, who knows what we will see? Can they go out or will they stay at home? Maybe we can wager. So type what you think is type whether you think they'll be allowed to go home or they'll be allowed to go out or they'll be allowed to stay at home. Okay. So yeah, the rest of you, I mean, everybody put your answer there before so that we see the winners. Okay. Okay, so let's run this. If oh sorry, I actually have to. Cannot access coffee before initialization. Okay, this is a thing that we'll talk about later about scoping. I mean, we briefly spoke about scoping, but just because I don't want to, just because I want to be lazy about it, let me just uh I changed my answer to go out. Okay, one second. Okay, so it says the answer is you can go out. So I guess Amma is the only one who said you can go out. Now the reason the answer is you can go out is when we use the or operand, what it means is that as long as one of them is true, then we can run whatever is in the if block. So both of them don't have to be true. So in this example, Kofi is 18, even though Amma is 15, because one of them is true. So whatever is in the if block can be run. So it's usually as long as one of the conditions is true, then we'll run what is in the if block. Now the opposite of it is the else block. The opposite of it is the end operand. So for the end operand, I hope they all make sense. So with the or, if either of them is true, then our code, whatever we are saying should happen will happen. But then for n, both of them have to be true. So when we use the n operand, it means that both conditions have to be true. So in that same code, if it was n, if we change this to n, and the n, so just so that the way you do all is just this double line. So uh that's the or, and the way you do n is just double ampersand. So for n, we are saying that for n to run whatever the positive part is, both of them have to be true. So in this example, if we were to save it, let me clear my terminal. If we were to save it, of course, whenever you make changes, save your code. And this is real life of what happens when you forget to save your code. Clear. So if we were to run this, we can see that it says stay at home children. Why? Because we said when we use n, both conditions have to be true before we run the if block. Else we're always going to run the else block. But for all, as long as one of them is true, we'll still run what is in the if block. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So just to reiterate quickly, we said there are, I mean, we've spoken about three logical operators. So we use not when we want to check not. So if Kofi is not a boy, do this. The way we do it is we use the exclamation mark. That's the way we do a not. And the other operand is or. So or will return true as long as one of the conditions is true. So either this or this is true, it will still return it. But for end, both of the conditions have to be true. So if this is true and this is false, it won't run the if block. It will still return false. So it will run the else block. But both of them have to be true when we use the end. So this has to be true. This has to be true before we run the condition for when it's true. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So in the same light, okay, in the same light, we spoke about conditional. So we said sometimes we need to perform different actions based on different conditions. We need to perform different actions based on different conditions. Now, the way we do that is we use what we call a conditional, and conditional is essentially just an if or else block. So if condition is true, do ABC. So in our example, we said if Amma is I've forgotten what we just wrote. So this is our conditional. So we said if Amma is this and Kofi is this, do this. So this is how we write a conditional. It's an if block. So that is a conditional where we do something based on different conditions. So if this is true, we do this. If this is false, we do this. So we use a conditional. Now we can do, like you can see for the other one, we had if it wasn't true, do something else. But there's also what we call the else if. So what the else if is if this one is not true, then do this. But then if this one is not true, now do this. So for the if is the first thing we check. But when we add an else if, we can also check for an additional thing. So we are saying that if today is not Monday, if today is Monday, do this. Else if today is Tuesday, do this. Else do this. So with the let me just write it so that we can see. So for example, let's say alert. And I don't think you can do alert. Okay. So let's say, let me just write what we are going to do. So if today is Monday, say I hate today. But we can also check. So else if today is Tuesday, I still hate today. Am I okay? Else if today, I'm missing one. Else if today is else say I love today. So this is what you call a pseudocode. So sometimes before you actually write a code, you write out the logic of what you're trying to do. So we're trying to implement an else if or else block. So the if block is going to say if today is Monday, say I hate today. But then we don't want to say we love today. So we want to also check if today is Tuesday, because we don't love Monday, we don't love Tuesdays either. So if today is not Monday, don't just say you love today. Check again. If today is Tuesday, still say you hate today. But then if today is not Monday and today is not Tuesday, then you can say that, oh, I love today. So the way we do that is like we are saying we have an if. So if today, and let me get rid of this. If today is equal to, as always, we said that we use 3 equal signs for equality. So if today is equal to, and Monday is a string because it's a combination of characters, so it's a sequence of characters. Console the log I hate today. Then, so usually you put what you want to do inside the curly braces. Then outside of the curly braces, if you have an else if, so else if, then you open the same thing. Else if today is equal to Tuesday, we still hate today. So console the log. Let me just copy and paste. I still hate today. But then if today is not Monday or Tuesday, it means Friday is drawing closer. So we can do an else console the log. Yay. I love today. So just to go over, we have an if. You open to parentheses, you write what your condition is. Then based on that condition, what you want to do, you put it in the curly brace. And maybe let me just space it out so that you can see. Then outside of the curly brace, you write your additional conditions. So your else if you open your brace, you write what the condition should be. Then based on this condition, what you want to do. Then if you have an else block, you just run. Sometimes you might just have an if and else. So you just want to check if this is do this, but if this is not met, just do this. But then you can also have multiple like side things that you want to check. So if this is not there, do this. If this is not there, do this. I mean, you could do this for all of them. So you could do if today is Monday, do this. Else if today is Tuesday, do this. So if you wanted different things for all the different days, you could have several multiple else if blocks. But then if you go through all of them and your condition is not met, you can have an else do this. So that's how you do it. So for example, if we give it like const today is equal to what day is today? Today is equal to Tuesday. If we were to save this and were to run it, it says I hate today. Why? Because it checked first. Is today Monday? No. Then it checked again. Is today Tuesday? So it's because today is Tuesday, or run what is here. So if we were to do today is Wednesday, it will be part of the else block, because then if these two conditions are not met, so for example, if we did today is Wednesday and we save it and we run it, we can see that it says, yeah, I love today, because then it checked this. It checked the first one before it runs. It checked the first one. It checked it's today. It's today. It's today. It's today Monday. It says, oh no, today is not Monday, so I can't run this. Then we give it an additional conditional check. If today is Tuesday, so we'll check, is today Tuesday? No. But because these conditions are not met, I will just run the else block. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, please, before we move on?
Not entirely.
Okay, please ask your question.
No, just having to process like everything like from this about the if else. Yeah.
Okay. So let me just, I mean, we have like 10 minutes to the break. So maybe let me use that time to run over this. So what we are saying is that sometimes we want to do different things based on different condition. So if it was afternoon, we wanted to go for lunch. If it was morning, we wanted to eat breakfast. So we want to do different things based on the time or based on like a different condition. So the way we do that is we use a conditional, and the way we write conditionals is we use if, else, else if. Now the first thing you usually have is an if block. So the if block is if a condition is true, do something. And most times the other thing you do is if, so let me just console it. So we're going to say if today is equal to Monday, do something. I mean, I don't know what you want to do, but do something. And the way I mentioned that the way you comment is you can do control/. When you comment, your browser and your computer doesn't read it as part of your code. So usually if you want to describe like what you're writing and stuff like that, you would use a comment just so that it's not read as part of your code. So we're saying that if a condition is met, do something. And the other thing we could do was if all these conditions are not met, then do something else. But then sometimes we want to check for multiple things. So we don't want to check if today is not Monday, do something. If today is Monday, do something else, do something else. But sometimes we want to check for other things too. So if today is not Monday, we want to also check if today is not Tuesday. Because currently all this is going to do is that as long as today is not Monday, it's going to do something else. But then we also wanted to check if today was Tuesday. The way we'll do that is we'll add what we call an else if. So if today is not Monday, before you go and do something else, first check if today is Tuesday. Check before you just go and do something else. Check if today is Tuesday and then do something. Now, if today is not Monday and today is not Tuesday, it's just going to do something else. But let's say we also wanted to check if today is Wednesday, so now we are given them multiple things to check. We don't want to say that if today is not Monday and today is not Tuesday, just do something else. So we can also give it another else if. So we can also check again. Else if today is Wednesday, still do something. So if today is Monday, first I'll check. If today is not Monday, before it comes and does something else, I'll also check. If today is not Monday, let's check again. Is today Tuesday? Then let's check again. Is today Wednesday? If they check and all these things do not pass, then we know that this is the thing we have to do. So by using multiple if statements, we can check different things before we do something. So if today it was Monday, we will do something. But then if today is not Monday, it also check. Please check. Is today Tuesday? Then it'll check. If today is not Tuesday, it'll check. Is today Wednesday? But if it checks all these three things and then it's not Tuesday, then we'll tell it what to do. So by using if conditions, we can give it like multiple things to check before we run something. I don't know if that clarifies it, but if anyone
Yeah,
has any questions, please you can come off mute or ask in chat.
it's better now.
Okay, great. Okay, so those are what we call conditionals, and usually you would use conditionals when you want to perform different actions based on different conditions. Okay, so the if statement, so the else if is usually optional. So I mean, except we also wanted to check for other things, but usually you just check if this is true, do something else, do something else. But if you wanted to check, give it like multiple other things to check first, you can add an else if. So the if statement may contain an optional else block. It only executes when the condition is false. So if this is falsy or is false, then you do other things. You can also check for several variants of the condition. So you can check for multiple things in the else if block before you finally run what you are doing if your condition is false. Okay, so this is I mean I put this example there. So for example, let's we can define a variable or we can declare a variable access allowed. And what we want to check is that if somebody is 18, then allow them access. If they are less than 18, deny them access. So first we can ask the user, how old are you? So based on the age they enter, so if they enter that their age is greater than 18, then we can allow them access. If they say that their age is less than 18, then we can deny them access. So maybe if we had like something that was meant for adults, usually when you go on some website, they ask, are you 18? Or if you go somewhere, they ask, like usually they have like different prompts that they ask you for different things. So this is like one of the use like a conditional. So you check the user's age. If your age is this, and the way you do that is use a conditional. Yeah. So I mean, I don't think there's a need to test this, but this is like an example of how a conditional will work. So we could also like give it like an additional check. So we wanted to check if they were not 18 and they were 17, we still wanted to give them access. We could add an else if. So we'll do else if age is equal to 17, still give them access. So that's a way of adding like an additional thing. So if they don't pass the first one, check if they'll pass the second criteria. But if they don't pass or then just run what is in the else block. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so before we jump into functions, I guess we can take the break. So I'll just pull up my timer here. Then, but any questions before we take the break? Okay. If no questions, we'll take a 5 minutes break. When we come back, we'll jump into functions and we'll write some code. So I'll just start the timer and I'll see you all in 5 minutes. Okay. Hi, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good break. I mean, I did. I was just sitting here, but I hope you had a good break. So, just to jump into more things now, I was just thinking about it during the break, but as soon as you understand variables, you understand conditionals, you understand functions, you understand loops, which we'll talk about today, you can almost do anything that you want to do because no matter how complex an application gets, like the when you narrow it down, you still be using the same thing. So no matter how complex an application you are building, you'll still be using variables, you'll still be using conditionals, you'll still be using functions, you still be using loops and things like that. So as long as you understand this, then you have like the tools to potentially become like dangerous and build anything that you want to build. So hopefully, if it wasn't making sense the last time, hopefully it's starting to make sense. And I mean, hopefully we're getting somewhere. So the next thing we want to talk about is we want to talk about functions. Now, before I just go into uh okay, I already have it, but does anybody have like knowledge on what functions are? If you have, I mean, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be textbook knowledge or anything, but if you have just a general idea of what functions are. And I like when people talk back to me so that I know that, yeah, we're together in this. Okay. So functions are simple sets of instructions. Now, for most of the code we have been writing, we have just been writing like we're declaring variables, we are using them and things like that. But there are sometimes when all the block of code you write, you want to be able to use them and you don't want to keep writing them over and over and over again. So for example, the conditional rule for when we're checking the age, I mean, we had said Kofi and Ama, but so if we want to check for like Yao and Ajua, it means we have to rewrite the same thing again. And it can get like very tedious. So then comes in functions. So functions are just blocks of code that we can write and continuously use them. So if we have things that are related, for example, when we're checking the age, that block of code is related. So we can group them together, then continually reuse them so that we don't have to repeat ourselves. So functions are just a set of instructions. We use them to group related code so that we don't have to continuously rewrite them or repeat them. Now, there's a way that we write a function, and I mean, hopefully, by the time we'll be done, you will be familiar as to how to write a function. Yeah. So the first thing you do is just like when we're declaring like variable names, we have like the keyword let or const go before the variable. When we're declaring a function, we have the function keyword come before it. We have the name of the function, so what we want to call the function, and parameters. So parameters are just things that we want to pass in. So for example, if we wanted to write a function, and I'll get rid of all this code. If we wanted to write a function, so we want to write a function to add two numbers. So if we wanted to write a function to add two numbers, first of all, the way we're doing it was maybe we're just doing like 1 + 1 is equal to what? Then we're trying to get the response. So it means that when we want to do 2 + 2, we have to come again and do 2 + 2. If we wanted to do 3 + 3, we have to do that all the time. But with a function, we can write a function so that it can continuously redo that for us. All we have to do is just give it the parameters. So we said the first thing we do is we use the function keyword. Then once you write a function that adds two numbers. So let's just name the function add two numbers. Now, what you pass in as parameters is what you want, what type of information you'll continuously be passing into the function. So in this function, we said that we want a function that adds two numbers. So it means most times we'll give it two numbers and we want it to add it. So that will be our parameters. Our parameters are things that will continuously be reusing in our code. So in this example, if we're saying add two numbers, we believe that most times we'll give it two numbers and we expect that it will give us a response. So we can just name it number one and we can just do number two. So it means most times we'll give it two numbers and then it'll add them. So this is our function declaration. Now, inside of the function, we write what we want to do. So we can say that it should console log number one plus number two. When you're writing actual code for production, you won't be using a lot of console logs. Console logs is just because we want to see the response right now. But usually when you're writing like code for production, you don't want to see everything, except you want to test out something quickly whilst you're writing. So yeah, but for now, we'll use a lot of console logs because we want to see the results for teaching purposes. So console log number one and number two. So this is a function that is adding two numbers. What we are saying is that we'll pass in two parameters. We'll give it a number one. We separate the parameters with a comma, and we'll give it a number two. And we'll say that when we give those things, what we wanted to do is we wanted to print out this number plus this number two. So let's test it out. If we want to check, if we want to use a function, you just type the function, the name you give to the function, then you open to parentheses. So for example, now we wanted to add two numbers. So let's say 2 and 3. So our number one will be 2, and number 3. So let's just console. Let me see if I run this. I think it's already console login. So if I run this, we can see that our result is 5. So by doing this, we've been able to make it modular that we can continuously use it. So for example, if I wanted to add another number, I could do add two numbers, pass in a number one. So number one is 5, number two is 19. If we save this and we run it, we can see that it has given us 24. So by using functions, we're able to group related codes, then we can continuously reuse them and reuse them and use them without having to rewrite. Does it make sense? Does anybody have any question? And please ask questions. So that's why we're here. I mean, if you have any questions, ask here. I mean, if after we've answered the question, you don't understand, you can go and think about it. But if you're here and you don't, things are not making sense, you can always ask. So we're saying that functions is a way that we can group interrelated code. So at first, all we would have done was we would have done 2 plus 3. Then we'll try and save the result somewhere. Then if we wanted to do another thing, we'll have to come and do 2 plus 5 again. Then we'll try and save it somewhere. But by using a function, we can just write a function once and give it something that we can continuously pass. We can have parameters, then what we are calling it. So when you are declaring the function, what you pass here is called a parameter. But when you are calling the function, what you do here is called an argument. So you call to argue. It's really just semantics, and you don't really have to worry about it too much. But when you are calling the function, so the way we call the function is we use the name of the function. Then if when we're establishing the function, we give it parameters, we pass those parameters we want to now use. So we separate them with commas. I mean, we could also do the same thing where we are not accepting like any parameters. We could just have a function that doesn't accept any parameters because it will do the same thing. We don't need new information. So that's how you do a function. So first you have the function keyword, then you have the name of the function, then if you have parameters. For example, we can have a function that doesn't have any parameters. So for example, if we had a function and wanted a function to do the same thing all the time, we say call my name. Let's call this function call my name. And as always, your functions can be called anything, call my name. So all we want this function to do is we're hard coding things inside that console.log. Hello, Cornelius. So we want this function to do the same thing every time. So we just hard coded hello Cornelius. So it means that every time we call my name, if we run it. So the way you call it is the name of the function and 2 parentheses, except it has parameters, then you pass them in as argument. But if they don't, you just, because for here we didn't give them any parameters. So when we're calling it, we don't have to pass in any parameter. So if we do call my name, it will always call hello Cornelius. But then, for example, if we wanted it to be dynamic, so we wanted it to always call the name of the person who was passing in their name, we could maybe pass in a parameter. And the name of the parameter can be anything. I'm calling in name here, but it doesn't mean that it has to be name. It'll work without anything. So I'll just say console.log hello. 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 Class. So I'm just saying that I should call hello plus name. So if I do call my name and I do, so let's say let's name. No, so I mean, so we said we're passing in a parameter of name. So it means that our function expects a parameter. So in the parameter, I can pass the name Cornelius. And because Cornelius is a string of characters, it has to be a string. So if we save this and we run it, we can see that it's saying hello Cornelius. If we change it to maybe Amma, or I mean, let's not change it to Amma. Let's call the same function again. Let's call the same function again and give it, oh, amazing. Let's call the same function again and give it a different parameter. So let's say this time we call it Amma. If we save it and we run it, we can see that now it's console logging hello Amma. And maybe I can add a space. If we save it and we run it again, we can see that, why is my space not showing? Yeah, we can see that now it's hello Amma, hello. So by using function, we can do dynamic things where we can reuse a block of code over and over and over and over again. And like I was saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be named. Like I'm just saying that of when I'm calling this code, I'll pass something in. Here I'm using the name so that I always remember that it's a name that I want to pass. But in the same thing, I could just do A. And if I run the code, it'll still run because it's not it says name is not defined. Okay, because I have to change this thing. So if I save it, so we can see that it says hello, hello, Amma, hello. So with the functions, whatever parameters you pass in, that is what you'll always use. But then if you don't need to pass in any parameter, like we said, if I'm selfish and I wanted to call my name all the time, I could just remove this and just like hard code into the function hello Cornelia. So it'll always call my name. But then if I put parameters here, it means that I could always reuse this code and it will use the information I pass in every new time. So today, if I want to pass in this, later in the code, if I want to pass in this, I'll still consist. I can consistently use this block of code and it will always be calling my name. Same thing with the numbers. I can give it two parameters and you can give it as many parameters as you want. So for example, you can say number 3. Like I'm saying, it doesn't have to be anything. I could maybe do kill. I could do kill. I could do Y. I could do this. Then all I have to do is that I'm saying that add kill plus W plus E. If I pass into 3, so all that will happen is that what I pass in will replace this. So 2 will replace the kill, 5 will replace this will replace this. So if I log add two numbers, it'll add the two numbers because in my function, I'm telling them that whatever I pass here, add those. So if we run this, we can see that it adds them and it makes it 10 because 2 plus 5 is 7, 7 plus 3 is 10. Does functions make sense? So again, just to go over, the way you declare a function is you have the function keyword, you have the name of the function, and I think I have it in the slide. So let me just open up the slide. So you have the function keyword, you have the name of the function, you have parameters that you want to pass in. Then if you want to use the function, you have to do what we call the function. So the way you call the function is when you're calling it, you don't have to add function again. You just have to use the name of the function and pass in the argument. So the arguments are the parameters. So if you wanted to call like the name, you pass in what you want to replace this, then you just run it. Does that make sense?
Cornelius, I have a question.
He's gone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
I have a question. So why is it that we have to like make it text? Because in the when you were defining the function, it didn't have to be text, right?
Yes, yes. Yes. So the thing is, when we're writing out a function, we are passing in parameters and stuff like that. That is not the actual content that we're going to use. It's a placeholder. So the
Yeah.
placeholder is just there for when we are eventually going to use the function. Now, when we're going to use the function itself, whatever we pass in is the actual thing that we want to use. So the actual information. So that's why when I come here, when I say add two numbers, I could use random things because it's just a placeholder. But then when I'm calling the function, I have to use numbers because then I can't add alphabets. I have to add numbers. So here, when I'm calling my name, if I were to call the name without, this, I expect it to return undefined because then it doesn't know what Cornelius is. So
Oh, okay.
if we were to run it, and I mean just for test purposes, let's call my name. Let's call my name. So it says Cornelius is not defined, right? Because then it doesn't know what Cornelius is. So when we're actually using it, we have to pass in the right data type that we want. So if we wanted to, what we are passing in is a string, we actually have to make it a string because this is a string. But then when we're declaring or when we're trying to write out the function, these are just placeholders. So the data type doesn't really matter because it won't use this data type. It will use what we pass in when we are going to call the function. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. So when we're declaring a function, we can pass in anything. So here add two numbers. I'm doing kill plus y plus e. You'll be like, but those are not numbers, but they're just like placeholders. But then the good thing to do is usually do things that will make sense. That's why I was like number one, number two, just so that I won't come back 5 years later reading this code, or maybe a few weeks later. Then me now read the code, I'll be confused that y is q adding to y and adding to e. So number one plus number two, then plus number three. Yeah. So that's why you can write number. I'm not actually writing the thing. So when I'm calling it, I have to pass in the right data type. Okay. So if you were able to download the class materials, I have a folder inside. It's called conditionals practice, and I'll close this and I'll clear this. And how many of us are able to like code right now? You're in a position to code. I mean, I feel like the best things to do is to like have time to practice even during our times together. So that's why I try to put like some things that we could do together. So and I think I've already done a conditional practice, but just like go over it. Okay, but instead of the conditionals practice, okay, maybe let's do let's do temperature converter first. So in the temperature converter, if you're able to, and please, how many of us can code right now? Let me see by thumbs up if you're in a position that you're able to code. Like you have the class materials downloaded, you have it on your computer ready to go. Let me see a thumbs up. If you don't, let me see a thumbs down. Okay, I can't see any thumbs. I don't know if we're ready to go or not. But I mean, just let me see. Okay, anyone else? Okay, cool. So I mean, uh, okay, cool. So please try and download them. I have some. I mean, I was hoping that we could do it together. So I mean, you guys will go over it. Then after we could do it together. But then I was hoping that for the first thing we could, okay, just a minute. So what I can do is I can quickly uh, put the link in chat for anyone who can to download it. Let me grab it quickly. One sec, I'm trying to grab the link so that anybody who can, you can download it so that we actually do some coding. So that it's not just talk, 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 talk. We can practice the things that we've learned so far. Then we have one more thing to do before we wrap up for today. Class 7. Okay, so I'll put the link in chat for anybody who can grab it. And it's also in the class email for I'm sure we're all on the newsletter list. So I'm sure we all get the newsletter. So copy link. Okay, so I'm putting it in chat for anyone who wants to quickly grab it. Okay, so I just dropped it in chat. So what I want us to do, I mean, I'll give you a few minutes, but once you try and get it, let me just talk about what I want us to do. So what I want us to do is, I want us to, I mean, first of all, put like maybe 5 minutes on the clock so that we'll all try it, and after we can do it together. What I want us to do is I want us to build a simple calculator, a simple converter. So what our converter will do is that it will convert our temperature from degrees to Fahrenheit, or it'll convert it from Fahrenheit to degrees. So if the temperature that we get is Fahrenheit, it'll convert it to degrees. If the temperature that we get is degrees, it'll convert it to Fahrenheit. So we can, I mean, I said write pseudocode first, but then I started writing it. Were you able to get it? George, are you able to code? Are you able to grab the link? I don't know if Kenneth is able to grab it. Okay, George got it. Kenneth got it. Okay, great. Kobna, you have to use Replicant, so it might be difficult. Okay, cool. So I'll put 3 minutes on the clock. Okay, so let me just walk you through what I want us to do. So I already have some HTML, I think. So let me just open this in the browser. Do I have anything? Okay, so there's nothing in there. It's just plain HTML. So what I want you to do is to log it. So do a console.log. So first of all, what you want to do is do a prompt. Prompt. So you can do a prompt, enter degrees. Or first of all, what you want to do is you want to do like a function. Let me just quickly show you what we can do. Convert degrees, convert temperature. And I'm not writing the code, I'm just writing the structure. And then it will take two things. It will take the temperature, and then it will take the degree and Fahrenheit. What are they? They are measuring units. It will take, so let's call it, instead of typing measuring, okay, I guess. Let me just call it measure. So it will take measure. So first thing you'll do is you can have a variable const temperature. Then temperature will prompt. I just want to do this and show you how it will look. Then you can write the rest. Prompt, enter temperature. Then you can have another prompt, const. Don't be confused by what I've done. All I'm trying to do is we're trying to get the thing. We're trying to get the temperature. Then we're trying to get the whether it's in degree or Fahrenheit. So if we were to run this, if I open this in the browser, open with live. Let me just open it in Firefox. Okay, so all we want to do is, and if you can run the code, I'm coming, 1 second. Okay, temperature converter. So then we have to just, oh, okay, I'm trying to see what would be an easy way to do. So, okay, all you have to do is, first of all, just declare two variables, just declare a temperature. You can use a function if you're feeling fancy, but just declare, okay, everybody, let's code along. I'm just trying to find a way for you to get dynamic data so that it's not like you are just entering 20 degrees and converting it, but I actually want you to like go into the, like have your user input something so that you can use it. So that's two ways we can do this. Okay, so just don't put in a function. And if you run this in your browser, it should ask you to enter. So it should ask you to enter. I was trying to put in a function. It should ask you to enter a temperature. So you could do maybe 20 degrees. And if you do, okay, it'll ask you to enter whether it's in degree or Fahrenheit. So you can do degrees depending on how you want to do it. So what then happens is that whatever you put in will be stored here. It will be stored in like your variable. So for example, if I console.log, and I'll explain it again if it doesn't make sense. I'll explain if you console.log temperature. Let me run it and see. So if I console.log temperature, I can see that it's 10 because I put 10 in the browser. So first of all you want to do is you want to just declare two variables and do a prompt. I'm saying do a prompt so that it's dynamic, so that you can open it in your browser and actually enter data. So there's not like your hard code in it. Then it'll ask you do one to that is asking for whether it's degree or Fahrenheit. Then after you've done that, then this is where the actual work is. You do if degrees is equal to Fahrenheit, kind of Fahrenheit. If degree is equal to Fahrenheit, then you do the conversion to degrees. I don't know what you divide by. And if the measure they give you, if the measure your user enters is equal to degrees, then you do the conversion. Does that make sense? Should I go over it? Does that make sense? Okay, so first of all I'm saying is everybody should just add like a prompt. So a prompt is just ask your user. So for example, when I open my browser, because I have a prompt, whenever I refresh the page, it'll ask me for temperature because I said it should prompt and ask for temperature. So I'll enter 20. If I enter 20, then it also asks me for degrees, or so I can do like degrees. So all that is doing is that it is then storing it. So we said variables are used to store things. So because it prompted me, whatever I enter for degrees, now I'm storing it in temperature, so I can use it for anything. And then whatever I entered for the measure, now it's storing it here, so I can do. So after you've done that, what you want to check is you want to check if the measure is degrees, then you convert it to Fahrenheit. And let me just give you how to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So all you're doing is you're getting the data that they enter and you're storing it here. So by prompt, whatever they give you, you are storing it in this thing, you're storing it in this thing. And based on that, you can use that to do your calculation. So from how you convert Fahrenheit to is just you just divide it by, you multiply by 9/5. So if it's degrees, and you're trying to convert it to Fahrenheit. If you are converting Celsius to Fahrenheit, you just multiply by 9/5. So you multiply whatever they enter for the measure. So for example, if you do a conditional to check if the measure, whatever measure your user has entered is equal to degrees, then it means that you have to convert it to Fahrenheit. If whatever they entered was Fahrenheit, then you have to convert it to degrees. So the way you convert it to degrees is you multiply the measure by 9/5. I hope that makes sense. Let me open chat. Okay, does that make sense, everyone? Okay, so no problem if you are unable to get it done. So all the only thing I've done is that I was trying to do this so that like you can go into the thing and have somebody give you like response. So that it's not like you are doing temperature is fine, because then there's no fun in doing it. I just put like 5 minutes on the clock. You can Google how to convert this to this. Just give it your best shot. We'll go over it together. I just put like 3 minutes, and we'll go over it together. It's fine if you're not unable to do it fully, but just give it your best shot. So let me just pull up the timer. Yeah, the timer has begun, by the way. I'll show it on screen soon. Short break. I just have to change it to 3 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. No problem if you were unable to fully get to it. How many of us were able to do something? I mean, it's fine if you didn't complete it, but how many of us? Thumbs up if you were, and thumbs down if you were like confused, didn't even know where to start from. Okay, okay. So let's do it together. So, okay, great. So, let me just move this thing down so that it's not confusing. So first of all, let's write out our pseudocode as to what we want to do. So first of all, we want to build a simple converter. What we want to do is we we want to get the user to enter a temperature. Then we want them to enter the measuring unit. Then after, what we want to do is we want to have a conditional. We want to check if the measuring unit is in degrees, then we want to convert the temperature into Fahrenheit. else if it's all caps, else if it is in degrees, oh sorry, if it is in Fahrenheit, we want to convert that. Why am I typing in all cap? We want to convert that into Celsius and then maybe show it to them. Show it to them. So essentially, this is what we want to do. So let me get rid of this. We want to build a simple converter. What we want to do is we want to get the user to enter a temperature. Then we want them to enter a measuring unit. Then we want to check if the unit is in degrees, then we want to convert the temperature to Fahrenheit. But then if they say that their measuring thing is in Fahrenheit, then we want to convert it to degrees. So the first thing is, I mean, this is something you probably didn't know how to do, so it's fine. All we want to do is a shortcut. We want to just get a prompt. So prompt will just like build up something which will ask them to enter something. So we could just do the prompt and get them to do the thing. But then because we want to use the value on and on, we are storing the value inside a variable so that we can continuously use that. So whichever thing they enter, when they get this enter prompt, whatever they enter is what we'll store inside temperature, and whatever they enter for degree or Fahrenheit is what we'll store inside measure. So now after we've gotten that, what we want to check is we want to check if the measure, so whatever they give us, is equal to degrees. Whatever they give us, if it's equal to degrees, what we want to do is we want to take and again, as always, let's console the log so that we can see, but we want to take the temperature they give us and we're converting it into Fahrenheit. So what we want to do is we want to multiply it. This is the formula. So we multiply by 1.8, then we add. So I can just like copy this. I can just copy this. I'm just copying the formula. I mean, we are not mathematicians here, so we don't know how to do this. So we just want to multiply the temperature, which they gave us, by 1.8 and add. I think math is associative, so we have to actually put the 32 outside of the bracket. I mean, we can do an else if, but in this case, it's just two things. So we don't have to do an else if, because obviously if it's not degrees, it's going to be Fahrenheit. So we can just do an else. Else, we want to console the log. So we just want to log it and see. We want to log temperature. How do we convert? So if it is not degrees, it's obviously going to be Fahrenheit. So how to convert Fahrenheit to degrees is to convert how to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius is we just want to multiply by this and divide it. So we just want to do this and we just want to take the temperature. Okay, does this make sense? Should I go over it before we run it? And let me get rid of the formula might not be right, but I mean, no one knows math here. So I've cleared the comment just so that it doesn't look plenty. So first of all we are saying is first we want to get them to enter a temperature. So they'll enter a temperature. So it can be 10 degrees, whatever it can be 10, 20, 100, whatever they enter. Then we also want them to enter what measuring unit they are using. So is it degrees or Fahrenheit? Then we're saying that if the measure is degrees, then it means what we want to do is we want to take this temperature that they have given us, and then we want to multiply it by this, because apparently that's how you convert degrees to Fahrenheit. Else, so if it is not degrees, it's going to be Fahrenheit. So what we want to do is else, or if you wanted to be emphatic, you could say else if measure is equal to Fahrenheit. So if what they enter is Fahrenheit, The reason I didn't do it like this is because there were only two options. So of course, if it wasn't degrees, it was going to be Fahrenheit, but I still the same thing. Then after that, we want to console.log temperature is equal to this. So let's run this and see what we get. So first of all, let me save this. And let me see if I run. I don't think, let me run Node.js. Okay, so let me just run it in the browser. And so let me refresh and let me open my terminal. So let me open the browser console so that we can see. So if I refresh this, it's taking a while to refresh. Let me just open it again. Okay, so it's saying that I should enter a temperature. So let's say I give it 100. Then it's saying degrees of Fahrenheit. So let's say I give it degrees. So if I press OK, we can see that it has converted it to Fahrenheit. So let's just check if it is correct. So we give it 80. Let's just do manual math and see. So we gave it 80. We said it was degrees. So it means it multiplied by this. And let's take this formula, let's replace it and see if it will give us the same thing. So let me just take the same formula. Let me just replace this 100. Let me just replace this thing and give it the 100 I gave it. Or did I? Let me just run it again. I don't remember if I did degrees or Celsius. So I'm saying that degrees. Oh, sorry, I have to. The first question was, is it temperature? So let's say the temperature is 100, or let's say 1,000. Then it's asking me, is it degrees or Fahrenheit? So I'd say degrees. Then, so it has given me 212. Oh no, it has given me 1,800. This is just what I already had. So it has given me 1,800. So it has converted the measurements that we gave. And by the way, I didn't save. So let me just save and run it again. As always, don't forget to save your code. So if I refresh this, it's asking me for temperature. So 100. And then Fahrenheit or degrees, so degrees. So it has converted it, and now we have 1,800. So by using conditionals, we're able to do this continuously. So I could refresh the same thing and give it another temperature. Then you ask me, is it Fahrenheit or this? Then this time, let's say it's Fahrenheit. Then when I save it, so it has converted it to Fahrenheit. So by using our conditionals, all we are saying is that, first of all, we are taking this temperature. So we're asking them for temperature. So they are giving us a number. So what happens is when I went in my browser and I typed 100, now this thing is essential. This thing becomes 100 because that's what I gave it. And when it asked me whether it was Fahrenheit or degrees, when I typed degrees, now this thing became degrees because then it will replace it. So that's the value that is stored in it. Now, because it has become degrees, what it's saying is that now because this is degrees, now our measure is degrees. So this is going to be degrees. So what we want to do is we want to run this. So it will take our temperature, which is 100, multiply by this, which is like 1,800. Then you'll add 32, which is 1,832. Please, does that make sense? How we used our conditionals to dynamically render things. Let me know if it makes sense. And I'll drop this in chat for anyone. It won't show up properly, but I just put in chat for anyone who wants to look at it too. I put the code we just wrote in chat. So that's how we can use variables, and we can use conditionals to do things dynamically. I mean, I could just come and give it my own temperature, but then the temperature will be different. So by using this, I can store whatever the user is giving me. So whatever temperature they are giving me, I'm storing it in this variable. Then I'm using it and I'm using it. I can continuously reuse this. I could also just take this whole thing and maybe put in a function and call it function convert temperature, then I could copy the whole thing. So I could maybe pass in, I mean, if I want, I don't have to pass in any parameters because I'm already taking them in the thing. So it's the same idea, but now when I pass it here, I could use this thing to do something else where I wasn't converting temperature, but then it was doing something else. So that's how you can use functions and stuff like that. If it doesn't make sense, please, is anybody asking any question? I hope it makes sense. Do you have any questions? Okay. So we'll try one more, which should be hopefully okay. Okay, no, it was a temperature converter. Conditionals practice. Yeah, but I had one for practicing the conditional. So I mean, if you want to go over, please feel free. So it's just the conditionals where it's almost similar to the one we did. So if the day that you enter was Tuesday, do something. If the day that you enter was this thing, do something. So that, I mean, you have it in the class materials. I recommend you delete everything, try and write it again, delete it, write it again, and stuff like that. Don't just look at it with your eyes and be like, I can see what this is doing. So I know what is happening. Let's see. Okay. We have, I wanted us to do loops, but just so that it's not too much information, what I would like us to do is I have a simple functions thing, which is just simple functions. This should be something that we should hopefully be able to do. So again, for the last minute, I'll just put like maybe 4 minutes on the clock so that we can do this. So the first thing you're supposed to do is you're supposed to create a function. It takes in two parameters. It adds two numbers. We've done that. And so let me change it to three numbers because we've already done two numbers. So on your own, change it to three numbers. Then another thing you're supposed to do is write a function that multiplies three numbers and console logs the product. Then also create a function that divides two numbers and returns the sum, I guess, the product. When you divide, I don't know what you return when you divide. I guess you return the product. So if you open simple functions in the main.js, there's just these three simple exercises. So I'll put another 3 minutes on the clock and let's give it your best shot. Then we'll do it together, then we'll call it a day. Do we all have the do we all have the code? I mean, if you don't have it, so I'll put in chat for anybody who is just doing it directly off here. I just put in chat too, so you can look on it and just try and replicate it. So these are the three functions that we want to do. Okay, so 3 minutes. Okay. Do we need more time? If you need more time, put thumbs up. If you want us to do it together, just put thumbs down or any other emoji apart from thumbs up. If you need more time, put thumbs up. If you just want us to do it together, put any other emoji. Okay. So thumbs up means more time. So we can add like 1 more minute. Let me just add like 1 more minute then. I mean, we're not in a rush to get you the materials. We are just, I mean, if it takes time for us to do it, that's totally fine. So I'll make it 2 more minutes. I'm adding, I mean, 2 more minutes, we can. Okay. Okay, so let's quickly do this together, then we can call it a night. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a function that adds three numbers and alerts the sum. So as always, we said you start with the function keyword, function, and for this, let's just call it add3. You can call your functions anything, but you want to have a good name so that let's say it adds num1, num2, num3. Then it says we should alert it, so let's alert num1 plus num2 plus num3. So we could do this and that should work. I mean, if you wanted to be cleaner, you could maybe save the sum. So you could do maybe const sum is equal to num1 plus num2 plus num3. You could save that in a variable and just alert sum. So you could just do that. But any of them should work. So I just comment this. I'll share the code after class. So this should work. So let's call, and I mean, we could alert it, but just so that I don't go back and forth in the browser, let me just console or log it here so that we can finish quicker. So if we call, as always, if we want to use the function, we have to call it. So if we call it add three numbers, let's do 3 plus 3 plus 3, which should be 9. Let's run it and see if we get 9. Where am I getting the 10 from? I think I have something else. Oh, sorry. I'm in the wrong folder. CD dot CD simple function. Okay. Sorry, I was in the wrong folder. So node main.js. Am I still in the wrong folder? Okay, sorry. Okay, I think I'm in the wrong folder. Okay. Let me just open this in the browser. I can't figure out which folder I'm in. So if I don't want us to overstay our time. So it says not a number. So let's see. Console.log. Oh, okay. So I'm glad I made this mistake. So when you're calling the functions, I was trying to directly add them in the thing. But when you're calling them, because you're just passing in the argument, you don't have to. So all I have to do is just, because it's taking three numbers. Cause I don't know why I was trying to add them. I guess I'm tired. So all I have to do is just pass the three numbers. And now if I run it, uh, let me just run it in the browser. So if I run it, if I save it and run it again, save this, run it. So we should get 9. So it's adding 3, 3. So just so that you know, when you're calling the function, you pass in the argument. So I wanted to add three numbers. So I give it the three numbers that I want to add. Everything that I want this function to do is inside the function body. So I don't have to manually come inside and do 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. I don't know why I was doing that, but yeah. So now we see that it gives us 9. So that is working. Now the next one, and sorry if we're a few minutes over today. The next one was that we should create a function that multiplies three numbers. So let's do function multiply three nums. And let's say, for time, let me just do A, comma, B, comma, C. We want to log the product. So let's console the log A times B times C. So if we call this function multiply three nums and we give it three things, again, let's give it 3 times 3, which is 9, and 9 times 3, which is 27. We expect to see 27. So if we save this and we run it, we can see that it gives us 27. So that's that. Then the last thing was we should create a function that divides two numbers and returns the result. I don't think division is product. So let's call this function. As always, you start with the function keyword function divide to, I can just call it divide numbers. I mean, function name just depends on you. So we want to divide A, comma B. Then what we want to do is we want to console the log A divided by B. So if we call this function divide nums, if we call this function divide nums, and we pass in the argument, so let's say maybe 10, then 3. We expect it to be 3, I think. So let's run this. Okay, so it's 3.33333. So we can see that this is working. So first off, if you need this, let me just quickly share it in chat if you want to have it for reference. So I just shared it in chat. So that's it for functions. So these are examples of how we can create functions. So I will try not to go into loops because we're out of time. We're right on time. But next time when we meet, we'll go over loops and then we'll tie everything together and we'll run it back. So any questions before we leave? Okay. Yeah, I would appreciate if people have questions and they ask in the group and things like that, because just so that it's helpful for everybody. Because if you are learning on your own and things don't make sense, it's really hard. But that's why we have the class page and everything, so that people can sort of connect and learn together and things like that, just so it makes the journey easy, because learning to code is not like the easiest thing. But when you have people doing it with you, it makes it easy. So thank you all for joining. I hope you had a good class learning some more JavaScript. And our next class is on Saturday, and I'll share more on the page. So thank you all. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you all on Saturday. Bye, everyone.